She was celebrating her birthday alone in the restaurant, Mafia boss said. Bring her to me. Rain hammered the floor-to-ceiling windows, turning Manhattan into blurred streaks of neon. Inside the quiet restaurant, at a small corner table, Aria Hale sat alone with a cake for one. Her phone lay face-up beside her plate. The screen lit now and then, promo emails, app alerts, a like on the photo she'd posted of her solo birthday treat. No new messages from anyone who mattered. Not from the ex who'd torched last year's birthday. Not from the friends who'd quietly vanished afterward. She'd told herself she wanted this. No plans. No drama. No one to disappoint her. But under the soft golden lights, with 2 empty chairs and a cake meant for one, alone by choice, felt a lot like forgotten. Aria struck a match. The tiny flame shook with her hand before she steadied it and touched it to the candle's wick. "Happy birthday to me," she murmured. The candle flared, then went out in a soft breath. Smoke curled upward and disappeared. A single hot tear slipped free. She wiped it away fast, jaw tight, heart pounding at the thought that someone might have seen. "Just eat your cake and go." She took a bite. The cake was flawless. It tasted like nothing. From a dim alcove at the back, a man watched her. Leo Vance sat in the shadows, one hand around a glass of whiskey. Warm light from a wall sconce cut across his face, olive skin, dark hair, neat beard, the thin white line of a scar through one eyebrow. His suit was dark and precise. His posture looked relaxed. His eyes weren't. He'd noticed Aria the moment she walked in. Rain-damp hair, voice a little too steady asking for a table for one, that bright, brittle smile. He watched her pick a table right by the window, right where everyone could see her, and then pretend it didn't bother her when no one joined her. Most people would have glanced once and looked away. Leo didn't. He watched her light the candle, whisper to herself, blink hard and swipe away that one traitorous tear. The sight hit a place in him he'd walled off years ago. He knew what it was to sit in a crowded room and feel like the only one there. His fingers tightened around the glass until the ice clicked. Then he set it down. "Marco," he said quietly. One of the waiters near the bar peeled away. In the vest and crisp shirt, Marco Shaw looked like staff, but the way he moved, controlled, aware, said otherwise. "Boss," he murmured. Leo's gaze stayed on the woman by the window. "Bring her to me." Marco didn't ask why. "Yes, sir." Aria was shredding the corner of her napkin and pretending to scroll her phone when a polite cough at her side made her jump. She looked up into a courteous smile and an immaculate black vest. "Miss," the man said softly, "would you mind accompanying me? We'd like to offer you a more comfortable table." For a second, all she heard was, "We'd like to move you. Even the staff feels sorry for you." She straightened. "Oh, no, it's fine. I'm okay here," she said, trying for casual and landing closer to defensive. "Really?" The waiter leaned in a fraction, voice dropping. "The gentleman in our private lounge has requested your company, Miss Hale." Her heart stumbled. "Requested your company." The phrase sounded like it belonged in an old movie. Or in a warning. She followed his small nod toward the far end of the restaurant. Only then did she really see the lounge, etched glass panels, tall plants, softer light. And a silhouette. A man sat there, half in shadow, facing her. Even from across the room, she felt the weight of his attention. The last few minutes replayed in her head. The candle. The whispered, "Happy birthday." The tear. How much had he seen? "I'm not sure that's a good idea," she said, fingers curling around her phone. The waiter's posture didn't change, but something tight flickered in his eyes. This wasn't a casual suggestion. He needed her to say yes. Across the room, the man in the lounge shifted. He straightened and dipped his head once, slow and deliberate. The staff moved around that corner of the room with practiced care. The manager's gaze kept sliding that way. There was a quiet gravity there Aria couldn't explain. Power, her instincts whispered. Trouble, her common sense added. Every rational part of her screamed to stay put, pay the bill, and go home. But then what? Crawl into bed in her tiny apartment and pretend this hadn't been the loneliest night of her life? Maybe letting one stranger interrupt it wasn't the worst choice she could make. She exhaled slowly. "Okay," she said. "Just for a minute." Relief loosened the waiter's shoulders. "Of course, miss." He lifted her small cake with careful hands and gestured for her to follow. As Aria walked between the tables, conversation seemed to dip. Maybe she imagined it. Either way, the air felt different, thicker, expectant. At the entrance to the private alcove, she stopped. The man rose as she approached. Up close, he was taller than she'd guessed, broad-shouldered, solid. The low light caught his dark hair and the pale slash of that scar in his brow. His eyes were a clear, unsettling green that locked onto hers and held. For a heartbeat, the rest of the restaurant blurred out. "Buonasera, Aria," he said, voice deep and smooth, the Italian curling around the word. He studied her like he was memorizing her. "I'm Leo Vance." The rain softened to a hush against the glass, but inside the private lounge it was only the candle, the wine, and Leo Vance watching Aria Hale like she was something worth paying attention to. "To your health," he said, lifting his glass, "and to happier days ahead." His voice was low, steady, the kind that made simple words feel heavier. Aria raised her glass, hoping he didn't see how tightly she gripped it. "To better birthdays," she managed. Their glasses touched with a quiet chime. The wine slid warm down her throat, taking some of the sharp edge off the night. "Aria Hale," Leo repeated, as if trying the name on his tongue. Most people drown their birthdays in noise and bad decisions. You chose a table for one. Why? She gave a small shrug, eyes skimming the linen. "New city. New job. My old friends are 1,000 miles away. The new ones are work contacts." Her mouth tugged. Didn't feel like begging anyone to show up. He didn't look away from that truth. "Or," he said calmly, "you're not afraid of your own company. That's rarer than you think." It sounded like observation, not flattery, but it hit anyway. Somewhere under the ribs that had felt too tight all evening. "And you," she asked, "are you one of those rare people?" A guarded flicker crossed his face. "I've lived with solitude a long time," he said. "It keeps certain distractions on the other side of the glass." The way he said distractions made heat prickle down her spine. She shouldn't want to know if she was one of them. She did anyway. She cleared her throat. "When I'm not hijacking private lounges, I work in publishing. Mid-level. Manuscripts, deadlines, karaoke battles with copy edits." "Stories," Leo said. "You spend your days inside other people's heads. You say that like it's dangerous." His mouth curved. "Stories are why half the city gets out of bed. You keep the supply coming. That's valuable." No one had ever made her job sound like anything but replaceable. From him, it felt like being seen. "What about you?" she asked, grateful to flip the spotlight. "What does a man have to do to get his own lounge and waiters who move when he blinks?" A dry amusement passed through his eyes. "My family owns a few things," he said. "Restaurants, clubs, construction. We invest, we manage. It's complicated, but it pays everyone on time." Vague. Clean. It explained everything and nothing. Aria's Netflix-poisoned brain offered up words like crime family and kingpin. She shoved them away. Real life wasn't a prestige drama. Still, the way the suited men near the entrance watched the room, the way the staff tracked Leo's smallest gestures, buzzed with something heavier than successful businessman. Before she could decide whether to push, the man who'd brought her here, Marco Shaw, slipped through the glass partition. He leaned down and murmured in Italian near Leo's ear. One name cut clear through the soft syllables. Rylan Creed. Leo's jaw tightened once, a tiny movement that changed his whole face. The easy warmth cooled, something harder sliding into place. For a beat, Aria saw the man everyone else in this room seemed quietly afraid of. Then he looked back at her, and the edges softened again, as if he'd flipped a switch. "Everything okay?" she asked, keeping her voice low. "It will be," he said. "Unfortunately, business doesn't care that it's your birthday. I'll have to step away soon." The disappointment that rushed through her was quick and embarrassing. He was a stranger in an expensive suit. A stranger who'd turned a lonely cake into something else, and now the spell was thinning. "Of course," she said quickly. "You've already done more than I expected from tonight. Thank you for this." She gestured at the table, the lounge, the surreal bubble they were sitting in. Leo watched the way she stumbled over gratitude like it was unfamiliar. His thumb tapped once against the table. "When you leave," he said, "you're not taking the subway." She blinked. "I'm not. My driver will take you home. Marco will ride with you." His tone was matter-of-fact, but there was steel under it. "It's late, the streets are slick, and I'd rather not spend the rest of the night wondering if you made it home." Pride lifted its head. "I've survived delayed trains and blackout weekends," Aria said. "I'll be fine." "I don't doubt that," he replied. "Humor me. Call it part of the birthday arrangement." Arrangement made it sound transactional. The look in his eyes made it feel like something else. Outside, thunder rolled faintly. The heavy rain had thinned to mist, streaking the windows with silver. "Okay," she exhaled. "You win. I'll let your driver rescue me. Once." "Good." Relief flickered across his face, gone almost before she registered it. Marco reappeared at the edge of the lounge. Leo rose, and the small space felt suddenly colder. He extended a hand. "Come," he said softly. "I'll walk you down." Aria slid her palm into his. His grip was warm, steady, his thumb brushing once against her knuckles before he let go. The tiny contact left her absurdly off balance. They crossed the main dining room together. The people who'd watched her sit alone with her candle now watched her walk past on Leo Vance's arm, curiosity replacing pity. For the first time that night, she didn't feel like a sad story. She felt like a question. Outside, under the awning, the air smelled of wet pavement and exhaust. A black town car idled at the curb. Leo's hand hovered near the small of her back, not quite touching, but close enough that she felt the heat anyway. "Marco will make sure you get home," he said. "Text someone when you're inside. You can blame me for the late hour." "You don't know anyone I'd text," she said, a small smile tugging at her mouth. "Not yet," he answered. Two quiet words, too heavy for how little they knew each other. The driver opened the rear door. Aria slid into cool leather and soft shadows. Marco took the front passenger seat, giving Leo a brief, coded nod. The door shut with a solid thud, cutting off the sound of the rain. As the town car pulled away, Aria twisted to look back. Leo still stood under the awning, hands in his pockets, eyes fixed on the car until it turned the corner and the city swallowed him. Only then did she notice how empty the street ahead had become. The usual Manhattan hum had thinned into an uneasy quiet. Wet asphalt gleamed under streetlights, stretching into a darker underpass. Two black SUVs slid out from the shadows and stopped across the road, blocking their path nose to nose. The driver cursed and hit the brake. Marco's hand went inside his jacket in one smooth, practiced motion. His eyes met hers in the rearview mirror. All warmth was gone. "Head down, miss," he said, voice clipped steel. "Now." The town car screeched to a halt. Headlights flared. Doors flew open on the SUVs, figures spilling out into the rain-slick street. And Aria felt the night tilt, dropping her into something far more dangerous than bad birthdays. Aria barely had time to gasp before the first burst of gunfire shattered the night. Glass exploded behind her, spraying into the back seat like icy shrapnel. The town car lurched violently as the driver swerved, tires screaming across wet pavement. "Down!" Mako barked again. Aria dropped to the floorboard, arms over her head as another round punched through the rear window. Wind and rain knifed into the cabin, carrying the acrid bite of gunpowder. Her heartbeat roared louder than the gunfire. This can't be real. This can't be happening. The car jolted sideways, metal crunching as it slammed into something. Maybe a guardrail, maybe the median. She couldn't tell. Her palms slipped on spilled rainwater, her breath coming in short, panicked gasps. Marco's voice cut through the chaos. "Hale, are you hit?" No, I don't think." A shard of glass nicked her cheek. She winced, trembling. "Marco!" "Stay down," he hissed, cracking his door just enough to aim his weapon into the night. The sudden silence that followed was worse than the gunfire. Deafening. Heavy. Wrong. The hiss of the radiator. The patter of drizzle. The ragged breathing of the wounded driver in the front seat. Aria dared lift her head. 2 SUVs blocked the road entirely, their red taillights glowing like eyes in the dark. Shadowy figures spilled out, moving with frightening purpose. Men. Armed. Masked. Her stomach dropped to her knees. They weren't here for anyone. They were here for us. Marco ducked low and cursed under his breath. Damn it! Creed's people. Creed. The name Leo had heard in the lounge. The name that had turned his face cold. Aria's lungs seized with a new kind of terror. A door yanked open behind her. Cold air rushed in. A gloved hand clamped around her ankle. "Got her," a voice snarled in heavily accented English. "The girl!" Aria screamed, kicking wildly. Her heel struck something, a jaw, a nose she didn't know, but the man grunted and loosened his grip. Another man lunged forward and grabbed her wrists, yanking her bodily from the car. Her back hit the wet pavement. Rain stung her eyes. Headlights scorched her vision. She tried to twist free, nails scraping against soaked asphalt. "Stop fighting, ragazza," one of them hissed. A gun jammed hard against her ribs. "Where is Leo Vance?" "I don't know," she cried. A lie wasn't even needed. She genuinely didn't. The man pressed the muzzle harder, enough to bruise. "Wrong answer." A thunderous crack split the night. The man's body jerked backward, blood misting the air as he collapsed. Behind him, Marco stood framed in the fractured light, pistol raised, rain dripping from his sleeves. His expression was carved from pure fury. "Aria, down!" She didn't hesitate. She dropped just as another burst of gunfire lit the street. Marco moved like a shadow, firing twice, precise, lethal. One attacker went down screaming, clutching a leg. The other staggered back, weapon slipping from his fingers. The echo faded. Then silence, broken only by the weak groan of the town car's dying engine. Aria lay trembling on the ground, heart slamming against her ribs. The night tilted around her. The world refused to stay upright. Marco rushed to her side, eyes scanning her quickly for wounds. "Are you hurt?" She shook her head, though she wasn't entirely sure. Everything stung. Everything shook. I think I'm okay," she whispered. A shuddering breath escaped him, something like relief breaking through his hard mask. "We need to move. Now." The surviving attacker moaned on the pavement. Marco pistol-whipped him without ceremony, sending him into unconscious silence. The driver, Carlo, stumbled out of the smoking car, one hand pressed to his bleeding shoulder. Marco cursed softly and hauled him upright, then turned to Aria. "Come on. Stay close. Don't look at any of them." She tried not to. But the image burned anyway. The sprawled bodies, the pooling rain-blood mixture, the cold metallic smell of spent shells. The entire world felt too loud and too quiet at once. Mako guided her toward one of the attackers' SUVs. The irony made her sway. "Wait," Aria whispered hoarsely as he opened the back door. "Where are we going?" "Someplace safe," he said. "Sit." "Now." She climbed in, numb and shaking. Two more men, Leo's men, slid in beside her. Reinforcements. She recognized them from the restaurant. Their presence should have comforted her. It didn't. Nothing felt real. Marco tossed a med kit to the back for them to tend Carlo's wound, then climbed into the front passenger seat and dialed on his phone. "It's done," he said, breath harsh. "We have her." Aria's head snapped up. "Leo." "Minor injuries," Marco continued. "Carlo's hit but stable. Hale's shaken but alive." "Yes, sir." "Heading to the safe house." "Safe house." The words chilled her more than the rain. The SUV pulled onto a side street, accelerating hard. Aria stared out the window, watching the city smear into a blur of wet neon. Her mind replayed the last 15 minutes in fractured flashes. The gun at her ribs. The hand dragging her from the car. Marco's shot hitting the man holding her. Her own scream. And Leo, a man she'd known for an hour, whose world had already tried to take her life. Her throat tightened. She forced herself to breathe. They hurtling through Manhattan in stolen vehicles. Men with guns on every side. Her birthday cake still sitting uneaten at the restaurant like a forgotten prop from a life she no longer belonged to. Aria wrapped her arms around herself and swallowed hard. She wasn't going home. She wasn't going anywhere normal. She was being pulled straight into Leo Vance's world. And whatever waited there, it wasn't going to let her walk out unchanged. The elevator doors slid open into a penthouse that didn't feel like any home Aria had ever seen. It wasn't the luxury, the marble floors, the skyline stretching endlessly through wall-to-wall glass, the quiet hum of hidden security systems. It was the stillness, the watchful silence that clung to the air like a warning. This place didn't belong to a businessman. It belonged to a man who expected war. Marco guided her to a leather sofa as two guards swept the apartment with military precision. Another man, older, carrying a black medical bag, entered moments later. He introduced himself only as Dr. Hale. The coincidence of the name barely registered through Aria's fog. He examined her quickly, hands practiced and gentle. "Shallow cuts," he murmured. "Bruising. No concussion. You'll be sore for days, but you're intact." Intact. That word felt unreal. He offered a sedative. Aria refused. If she closed her eyes right now, she feared she'd fall straight into the nightmare she'd just escaped. She wanted one thing. One person. "Where's Leo?" she whispered. Marco glanced toward the elevator, his expression unreadable. "On his way." Minutes stretched. The doctor left. The guards melted into their posts. The city glittered beyond the glass as if nothing in the world had shattered tonight. But Aria had. Her pulse kicked the moment the elevator chimed again. Leo Vance strode into the penthouse like a storm dragged in on two legs. Rain slicked his black hair to his forehead. His suit jacket clung to his shoulders, darkened by the downpour. His eyes, normally sharp, composed, now burned with a fury so intense the room itself seemed to tense around him. Then he saw her. The anger broke. Relief crashed over his face, raw, unguarded, devastating. "Aria," he breathed. She stood without thinking. Her knees almost buckled with the sudden release of fear she hadn't realized she was still holding. He crossed the distance in 3 long strides and pulled her into his arms. The world snapped into focus. Aria's face pressed into his chest, cold fabric beneath her cheek, warmth beneath the fabric, a heartbeat pounding too fast. Leo held her like she was something he'd nearly lost, arms locked around her, hands sliding up to cradle the back of her head. "I'm sorry," he murmured into her hair, voice low and frayed. "I'm so goddamn sorry, Aria." Her breath shook. "I thought—" Her voice broke. She swallowed hard. "I thought I was going to die." Leo's hold tightened. "I know." His voice cracked. "I should never have let you leave my side. I should have known Creed would make a move." Rylan Creed. The name that had chilled him at the restaurant. The name Marco had cursed on the road. The name behind the guns that had pressed into her ribs. Aria pulled back just enough to see his face. His jaw was clenched, rage simmering hot beneath guilt, but beneath that was something gentler, something that made her chest ache. How did they even know? Leo shook his head. "You were seen with me. That was enough." He looked away as if ashamed of the truth. "You were used to send a message." A shiver tore through her. Marco appeared in the doorway and cleared his throat softly, giving Leo a status update. Carlo stabilized, extra men stationed downstairs, all entry points secured. Leo didn't look away from Aria. Not even once. "Good," he said. His voice, in contrast to how he held her, was cold steel. "No one gets near this floor without my approval." Marco nodded and excused himself, leaving the two of them alone again. Leo exhaled shakily and brushed a thumb along Aria's cheek, pausing at a butterfly bandage near her temple. His expression twisted like the small injury physically hurt him. "They touched you," he whispered, as if it were unthinkable. "They hurt you." "It's nothing," Aria said softly. "I'm okay, because of your men." "No," his voice hardened. "Because I put you at risk." She reached up and cupped his jaw with trembling fingers. "Leo," she whispered, "I walked into your world by choice. I stayed in that lounge by choice. I got in your car by choice. This isn't your fault." He closed his eyes, leaning slightly into her touch despite the tension rippling through him. "You don't understand," he said quietly. "My enemies don't make mistakes. They don't give warnings." His gaze snapped back to hers. Tonight was a warning. Her stomach twisted. "So what happens now?" Leo stepped closer, close enough that his breath brushed her forehead, close enough for her heart to stutter. "I can have Marco take you out of the city," he said. "New hotel every night. New name. You won't be touched again." His voice dropped. "But if you stay with me, there will be more nights like this." She searched his face. The shadows beneath his eyes. The bruise forming along his cheekbone. The haunted look of a man who'd carried too much alone for too long. Something fierce unfurled inside her. "I don't want to leave," she whispered. Leo went still. "You don't." His voice was barely audible. She swallowed, tears burning hot. "I know it's insane. I barely know you. But tonight," she exhaled shakily, "when I thought I wouldn't see you again, that was the worst part." For a heartbeat, Leo didn't move. Then a sound escaped him, half disbelief, half something breaking free inside. He caught her hand and pressed it to his chest. "Aria," he whispered, voice rough, "you have no idea what you're saying to me." She managed a trembling smile. "Then show me." Leo pulled her against him again, not desperate this time, but with a reverence that sent a hot, painful sweep through her chest. His forehead rested against hers. His breath trembled. "You stay," he murmured, "and I will protect you with my life." Aria's pulse thundered. "I choose you," she whispered. Silence expanded, thick, electric, irrevocable. Then Leo kissed her. Soft at first. Careful. Like testing the shape of something he'd never allowed himself to want. But when Aria's fingers curled into his jacket and she rose onto her toes, he deepened it, slow, intense, devastating. By the time they parted, both were breathless. Leo pressed his forehead to hers. "I won't lose you," he said. Outside the tall windows, lightning split the sky, illuminating the city below. Inside the penthouse, Aria knew something had changed forever. Not just between them. Inside her. Dawn crept slowly across the skyline, soft gold bleeding into the storm's fading bruise. Aria blinked awake to unfamiliar sheets, faint lavender detergent, and the heavy warmth of an arm draped around her waist. For a moment, she forgot everything. Then last night surged back, the gunfire, the SUV, the terror, the kiss. And Leo. She turned carefully. He lay beside her, on top of the covers, one arm still around her like even in sleep he'd been guarding her. In the morning light, he looked younger, the hard edges softened. A bruise marred his cheekbone, and faint shadows clung under his eyes. He looked human. Fallible. Breakable. Aria's chest tightened. He stirred as if he felt her watching. His eyes opened slowly, landing on her with warmth that unraveled something deep inside her. "Buongiorno," he murmured, voice rough from sleep. "How did you rest?" "Better than I expected," she whispered. "Thank you for staying." Leo lifted her hand and pressed a slow kiss to her knuckles. The tenderness of it hit her harder than the kiss they'd shared last night. "There was nowhere else I would have been," he said simply. Aria's heart stuttered. She leaned forward and brushed her lips to his cheek in gratitude, but he turned his head slightly, and the soft kiss grazed the corner of his mouth instead. They froze. Their breaths mingled. Her pulse thrashed. Leo moved first, closing the tiny distance to capture her lips in a gentle, unhurried kiss that tasted like morning warmth and sleepless fear finally melting away. Aria sighed into it, fingers curling into his shirt. When they separated, she was dizzy in a way that had nothing to do with danger. "Happy birthday, Aria," he murmured. She smiled. "Definitely not one I'll forget." They eventually pulled themselves from the cocoon of blankets, and Leo insisted on making breakfast, if eggs slightly scorched around the edges could be called that. Aria sat at the kitchen island, chin propped on her hand, watching the most intimidating man she'd ever met battle a frying pan. "This is strangely adorable," she teased. "Careful," Leo said without looking back. "Mock the chef and you may go hungry." "You couldn't starve someone on their birthday," she said. "It's against the rules." He turned, brow raised. "What rules?" "The universal ones," she said wisely. A ghost of a smile curved his lips. "Then I suppose I'm bound to them." They ate together, quietly, comfortably. She told him about the books she loved. He spoke of a tiny Italian town by the sea where he'd once spent summers, his voice turning wistful, eyes distant for the first time. It felt absurdly normal. It felt dangerous in a new way. Then Leo's phone buzzed. The shift was immediate. One glance at whatever message appeared on the screen, and the softness in him hardened into resolve. Aria's stomach tightened. "What is it?" He hesitated only a moment. "Rylan Creed." The name dropped like a blade. Leo rose, sliding his jacket back on. His movements were clean, efficient. A man preparing for confrontation. "It seems Creed ordered last night's attack," he said. "I need to handle it." Aria stood too, catching his hand. "Handle," she echoed. "Leo, be careful." He turned toward her, everything in him going quiet at her worry. He brushed a thumb across her cheek, eyes warm despite the tension coiling in him. "I will," he said. "And then this ends. For good." She swallowed hard. "Just come back to me." Leo leaned in, kissed her temple, and whispered, Nothing will keep me from coming back to you." Then he was gone, escorted by Marco and a small formation of men she hadn't even realized were waiting. Aria stood by the window long after the black SUVs pulled into daylight. Hours crawled. She tried reading, pacing, showering, staring out at the city like it might reveal answers. Each minute stretched thin, strung tight with fear. Finally, the elevator chimed. Aria spun just as Leo stepped inside the penthouse. Her breath punched out of her. He was alive. He was walking. He was hurt. A stiffness to his gait. A bandage beneath his shirt. A faint wince he tried to hide. She rushed to him. "Leo, you're hurt." "Just a scratch," he tried to say, but she saw through it instantly. Her hands trembled as she touched his arm, his side. "Leo." He caught her face gently between his palms. "Sure. I'm all right. Creed won't touch us again. It's over." The finality in his tone told her everything she didn't need to hear. Tears pricked her vision. She pressed her forehead to his, breath shaking. "Thank you," she whispered, not sure if she meant for surviving, for coming back, or for choosing her. Leo kissed her softly, reverently, like she was the anchor that had pulled him home. "It's I who should be thanking you," he murmured against her lips. "You've given me something I thought I'd lost." She touched his heartbeat through his shirt. "What's that?" He guided her hand more firmly over his chest. "Someone to fight for," he said. "Someone to come home to." Her throat closed around a quiet sob. She covered his hand with both of hers. "You have me," she whispered. "And I have you. That's enough." For the first time since she'd met him, Leo Vance smiled without reserve, open, warm, vulnerable. A smile only for her. He drew her into his arms, and she let herself fall into him completely. Outside, the sun dipped low, casting the city in gold. The last of the storm clouds faded into soft blue, leaving everything washed clean. Aria had begun the night alone with a candle no one saw. Now, wrapped in Leo's arms, she felt something new unfurl in her chest. Hope, bright and terrifying. She wasn't singing to herself anymore. She wasn't alone anymore. And she knew, with a certainty that settled deep in her bones, that whatever came next, they would face it together, hand in hand.